Forgotten mine. No. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the November meeting of Leeds City Council Executive Board. And I'd like to welcome in the public gallery students from Leeds Trinity University and Leeds Beckett University who've come to join us this afternoon. The only other formality I have at the top of the agenda is just to remind everybody that this meeting is webcast, and welcome to everybody watching online. And I will now turn to the agenda for the meeting and the formalities at the top of the agenda. So item 1, are there any appeals against refusal of inspection of documents, please?
Thank you, Chair. To confirm, no appeals have been received today.
Thank you. And could you update us on the exempt information, please?
Thanks, Chair. Should the board be agreeable, then Appendix 1 to Agenda Item 6, which is the delivery of new affordable housing at Sugar Hill, Oulton, and Appendix 1 to Item 8, which is Eastgate and Harewood Quarter Phase 2, both designated as being exempt from publication under Access to Information Procedure Rule 10.43, will be considered in private at the conclusion of the public part of the meeting.
Thank you. Item 3, there are no late items for this meeting, so I shall turn to the board for item 4 to see if there's any declarations of interest. And I don't see anybody indicating, so I'll turn to item 5 to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of October. I take it everybody is happy with those. So we'll move on to the first paper of the agenda, item 6, and it's in Councillor Lennox's portfolio, please.
Thank you. So members here will all know the background to the Sugar Hill and Wordsworth Close estates, where a long-standing and settled community of 70 households has been uprooted over the last 3 years by the actions of a private landlord using no-fault eviction powers and seeking redevelopment of the site for market housing. The impact that this risk of homelessness has had on the tenants in the community, many of whom are of retirement age and have lived on the estate for 40, even 50 years, can't be understated. They've faced an incredibly difficult time. Therefore, I'm really pleased that this report sets out how the council has provided ongoing support to those former residents and how the council's actions in introducing a registered provider partner has offered an alternative scheme of development that can benefit this community. Leeds Federated Housing Association has been able to acquire the site from the private owner and bring forward a scheme that will deliver 100% affordable housing in an area of the city that so desperately needs it. This housing will be available to former residents who meet the criteria of the local lettings policy now proposed, which is a framework that will give priority on the properties to former residents. The report also sets out a recommendation to approve the use of 2.8 million from the council's Affordable Housing Commuted Sums programme to fund a grant to the Housing Association, which will support the viable delivery of 30 affordable rented homes on the site. In turn, the recommendations set out in the report will provide former residents with clarity that new affordable rented homes are being provided, that they will be able to apply to rent in due course.
Thank you for that introduction. Are there any questions, please, Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the introduction. Just a few questions. So obviously, members will remember that there was an appetite from some in the council for the council to intervene and take full control of this. And I personally had an open mind about exploring that. I didn't think the case was made either way. So it's good news to have these new houses. The question is, well, the questions are, why now? What will, it'd be useful to get some clarity on if the money the council is putting in, were those houses going to be delivered anyway, with or without the council's money? Or is it just about changing the tenure of the properties? And what engagement has there been with the former residents to determine, do they want to come back, and what priority and opportunities are there for them to have the opportunity, if obviously the communities have been split up now, but what engagement has there been around that, please?
And certainly on the last question, myself and Councillor Lennox and other colleagues around the table have met fairly regularly with the residents of the estate over recent years to make sure they've been involved in the work that we've done as a council and our influence over that. So we have we have worked with the residents and the representatives over that time. So that's something that has been at the centre of what we've done around that. I will look to see whether Councillor Lennox or an officer wants to pick up some of the other questions. Martin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I suppose in terms of why now, Councillor Lamb, I think that it sits alongside what Councillor Lewis has just said in terms of the ongoing engagement that has taken place in terms of the residents, the desire of residents to want to be able to move back. And in terms of where Leeds Federated are in the delivery, now is the time where they need that formal commitment to be able to determine the appropriate mix of tenure that the site provides. So then in terms of your second question of what would happen without the grant fund, that would then go back to the default development that's outlined in the report, where the mixture of affordable to rent would be reduced by 16. So it would go from 30 down to 14, and there would be more shared ownership on site. And that would therefore reduce the amount of potential for residents that want to come back to rent a home to be able to access those through the lettings agreement that is before you today. So I hope that answers that. And I don't know whether a colleague wants to answer in terms of the detailed work that we've done with residents ongoing.
Jez, please.
Yeah, just following on what you said, Leader, there's been an awful lot of engagement with the residents around how we would potentially allocate any affordable houses that Leeds Fed provide. It does highlight in the report that we'll be consulting on a localised policy, and we're not necessarily giving people band A, as you said, for the properties, but that localised policy will frame how we give preference to people that have lost their homes through the demolition of that site to move back in there.
Great, thank you. I don't see anybody else wanting to come in on this item, so we've got the pink confidential papers we'll look at the private session at the end of the meeting, but I'll turn to the recommendations on page 25 and see that the board are happy with those recommendations. That's great, thank you, Councillor Lennox. If we can move on to item 7, please, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Leader. So this is the second annual report charting the progress of the Connecting Leeds Transport Strategy and covering the period from October 2022 to October 2023. And the full report is attached and available for everyone to read. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Any questions, Councillor Lamb, please?
It's probably more of a comment, which I suspect might elicit a more open answer than the introduction. So I would actually describe this as the disconnected Leeds strategy. And it seems to me that what we've done is make the city centre less and less accessible and try and force motorists out of their car, make it more difficult for taxi drivers, as I'm sure all of us are hearing in our inboxes regularly, make it harder to access the city centre transport hubs, particularly for people that represent outer areas as I do. It's much harder for people to get in and navigate the city centre, and it seems the approach is to repeat that in the outer areas and force people out of their cars without giving them a reasonable alternative to use as bus services are cut. For example, as I've learnt recently, plans to introduce parking charges in places like Wetherby, which I'd still urge you to rule out while there's still time to do that. But yeah, we're spending an awful lot of money. There's a lot of disruption for people to face, and you can live with that to make improvements. But it feels to me that we end up with a worse situation having had the disruption than we had before we started. So that's my comment. It feels like we have a disconnected Leeds strategy rather than a connecting Leeds strategy.
Councillor Hayden, please.
We consulted extensively between 2016 and 2021, and people told us that they wanted to see faster and more reliable bus services. and we have provided the infrastructure in the city centre for that allowed to happen. Hackney taxis, the black and white ones or the black ones, as are known to the general public, are allowed to use the bus gates, so they can go anywhere in the city centre. The majority of the city centre is accessible to the private car, and for loading, and even the pedestrianised areas are accessible up until 10:30 in the morning, as they always have been. Apart from areas like City Square, etc., but the majority are accessible for loading, etc. We needed a world-class city centre. We needed somewhere where it was pleasant for people to spend their leisure time, to enjoy the public realm, to enjoy City Square in particular. And when visitors come to the city, they inevitably come via the train station. And it is now a pleasure to walk out of the train station and straight into City Square without having to cross 4 lanes of traffic. The businesses around there that like to have, and this became particularly important during the pandemic, that like to have their chairs and tables out so people can enjoy a meal, very much like this approach, because people can sit and enjoy a meal and enjoy a drink without having 4 lanes of traffic going past them. 30% of the journeys through City Square were going from one part of the city to the other. They were not accessing something those journeys were not made to somewhere in the city centre. There is still a number of different parking opportunities around, and the inner ring road, we're actually blessed in Leeds to have an inner ring road so that you can access different parts of the city centre by using the inner ring road and coming off at different points. And it's about people getting used to a new way of accessing the city centre. We also, if we remember, and I do, being a teenager in Leeds when there were 3 lanes of traffic on Briggate, and you had to dodge the traffic to get, and in order to bring Harvey Nichols to Briggate, it was pedestrianised. And I don't think anybody on this council or anybody in Leeds would go back to having 3 lanes of traffic on Briggate. And City Square, I'm hoping, and I think it will be true, that in 10 years' time, my teenagers will look back and went, why did you have 4 lanes of traffic going through City Square? I can't, why would that happen? So, and the different schemes that have given us wonderful areas like Cookridge Street and new wider footpaths on the Hedgerow, a wonderful public realm round Corn Exchange, and really people can enjoy. They can walk safely on widened footpaths. And then we had the bus priority, because Cookridge Street is actually a bus priority scheme, so that the buses can go much more quickly along the Hedgerow. And we have reports that it is much better for the bus companies. We've had the pandemic, which has caused problems that we know for bus use, and we've had a change in working practices now that the city centre needs to adapt to. But footfall is up over last month in October. It was over 100% up, and in terms of the footfall at the train station, even though it's been redeveloped now and it needs to be redeveloped in order to increase capacity, it was up over 100% on 2019 levels. So people are coming to the city, they're enjoying the city. It is difficult around the train station at the moment, because that's being redeveloped and it's a very tight area in order to move the taxi rank and then we move back. But it is pain at the moment, but it will be for the benefit of the city centre. I don't know whether Gary or anybody wants to come back in on that.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just say a couple of words, if that's okay.
Yes, please, Gary.
It's fair to say it's been a very busy last 12 months, culminating in the work in City Square and the station. It involves working on Army Gyratory, amongst other things, but also bringing the Leeds City Bike Scheme into the city, the all-electric bike scheme, which is becoming increasingly popular. I think Councillor Hayden's covered off the main points I'd make in terms of the extensive consultations that have been had. In fact, they go back to city conferences in 2008 and 2010, where certainly the main thrust of the feedback was around the amount of through traffic that was coming through the city centre and causing pollution and issues in the very heart of the city centre. The main reason I wanted to just make a comment was I really wanted to put on record my thanks to the team who have worked under very challenging circumstances in terms of delivering City Square and associated measures over the last 12 months under increasing pressure. And just I'd like to express my thanks to my team, but also the wider directorate team who've helped as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gary. Councillor Pryor, please.
Just a very brief comment on footfall as well. It's something which I do get asked about quite a lot in my kind of role looking over the city centre. So just this past weekend alone, Saturday, we had 52,000 people in the city centre. That's up 22.6% on last year. Sunday, 30,000 people. That's up 7.6%. Monday was 28,000 people. That's up 31.4%. So people are really and quite steadily returning back to the city centre. And Kirkgate Market, which I also look after, is getting over 500,000 people in it a month now, which is pretty much back up to pre-COVID levels.
Thank you. Somebody else want to come in on this item? That's great. Thank you. So I shall turn to the recommendations on page 44. I'll take it the board are happy with those recommendations. Thank you, Councillor Hayden. And we'll move on to your papers, please, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Leader. And the first of my papers relates to a key gateway site in Leeds City Centre. The council have been contracted with Hammerson's under a long-standing legal development agreement to develop the site. We know that phase one of the site was Victoria Quarter, and John Lewis was extremely successful. And this paper relates to phase two of that agreement, which is in the paper. We need to vary and change the agreement that we have with Hammerson's currently, because the landscape has changed so dramatically in terms of the need for retail in that part of the city since COVID, and with the financial climate that we're in now, people using online instead of going in person to shop in the city centre. And so we're bringing forward a paper really that suggests that we move to a different agreement to allow there to be much more mixed use on that site than was originally envisaged by the developer. I'll leave it there, Chair. There are further papers in the pinks that detail, some heads of terms.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a brief comment. The main question I want to ask, I think I would have to ask under the private session, so I won't stray into that. But I think this is something that needs to come forward as soon as possible. Circumstances have changed, and it's right to revisit what's the right thing to put there. I think there's potential, and something we should be exploring to support the city centre is more residential, which I guess can be part of this potentially change. So yeah, it's good to see it coming forward, and I think we should do what we can as a council to support and facilitate that.
Thanks, Councillor Lamb. Tom, please.
Yeah, just a quick sort of confirmation, just to support what's been said by members, and to play to the comment of Councillor Lamb as well. I think meetings that Martin I have had with major owners, retailers, developers in the city, I'd say over the last year, which play into and confirm what Councillor Pryor was saying, is that we've managed over the last decade really to reconfigure the retail offer in the city really successfully in a period where many other cities have struggled to do that. They haven't been able to build two major shopping centres. They have, others have maybe not got the balance quite right between the city centre and other areas, really important centres like White Rose in our case. And the feeling is that this is a really big opportunity for a complementary development to, what we've done in relation to that sort of reconfigured and higher quality, but still really good mixed economy of retail from the market right the way through to Victoria Gate. So, the confidence of, I think, the footfall, but also the tenants in terms of particularly Trinity and Victoria Gate is really improving, and that will continue because we try and curate the city centre and use the places in between the buildings really carefully as well. And the Christmas market plans probably play into that and are a good example of that as well.
Thanks, Tom. I don't see anybody else wanting to come in on this item, so we do have the confidential papers to look at later, but I will turn to the recommendations on page 99, and I take it everybody is happy with those recommendations. That's great. Item 9, please, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Leader. And item 9 is the financial reporting for the first 6 months update of the year. The paper comprises of 3 separate reports within the paper, one being the financial health monitoring that we bring to Executive Board every month, the other being the capital programme that we report in quarters, and also the treasury management update that we usually report in quarters as well. We brought them together in one paper for ease for members. So the first one of which, the financial health monitoring, we are reporting a projected overspend in year of £30.5 million. The report goes into detail as to where that overspend is within different areas of the council, but mostly being through children and families demand, which has just seen increase in demand for the need for us for looked after children. And we know that that's not just an issue here in Leeds. We know that that is a national issue from all of our conversations that we're having. The report also details the HRA, and there is also a projected overspend within the HRA of £1.9 million as well. The figures reported at month 6 are also reflecting the agreed pay award for the NJC pay award now that we will be implementing into people's pay packets. The next part of the report is for the capital programme. And you will see from the detail of the capital programme that there has been a reduction in the amount that is in the capital programme by £16.4 million. This is reflecting in the HRA that we've had a reduction in that as well, and also from the general fund. The capital programme does go into quite a lot of detail about the various amounts of money that have been injected into, say, for the capital receipts incentive scheme, and you will find details of all of that in there, as well as the community infrastructure levy and the strategic fund on that one as well. The Treasury Management update shows the level of the external debt of the council, and I'm pleased to say that that is £28 million lower than the last budget. So I'll leave it there for questions, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Lamb, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't have too many questions. The update is gratefully received. I suspect a number of us are keeping our eyes firmly peeled to what's happening elsewhere to see what impact that will have. And yeah, I think there'll be a lot more discussion to be had in December and then leading up to the budget in February.
Thank you. I can't see anybody else wanted to come in, so I'll turn to the recommendations on page 123. I take it everybody accepts the report. Okay, we're on to Councillor Price paper and item 10, please.
Thank you, Leader. So this is the friendship oath with Kharkiv. So in June 2022, we received a letter from Kharkiv asking whether we would be interested in a twinning arrangement with them. About a month later, I met with the first deputy mayor of Kharkiv to discuss this further. And obviously in July, we as a full council voted unanimously to explore these twinning opportunities. A lot's happened since then, not least the Homes to Ukraine scheme. The Lord Mayor herself has been over to Ukraine with an aid convoy, including to Kharkiv, to build up further relationships and links there. I do think this is something really important that we as a city do as the war continues, showing our support for the people of Kharkiv. I've been on a consultation with the Leeds Ukrainian Association. And actually at that visit, I think I really saw the value of some of the City of Sanctuary work we've done in the Homes for Ukraine scheme. They told me that when a lot of the young children do come over, a lot of the pictures they're drawing are of tanks and of warfare and some quite horrific things. And actually, a few months on, a lot of those young Ukrainian children are drawing what normal children draw, whether it be rainbows or flowers or normal things for children to be producing artwork on. Obviously, the partnership with Kharkiv is going to change in nature. At the moment, it's very much through our support with refugees. But I really do hope, as the war hopefully does come to an end soon, that partnership can move more to culture, education, business links, as our friendship can deepen. So the signing of this friendship oath is the next stage in that relationship with Kharkiv and feels the next appropriate thing to do. There's one small change in the report. It does say that the Lord Mayor will be signing on a trip funded by the British Embassy to Brno, and that's changing to Prague. And I shall leave there for the report.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just to say, fully support the paper. It's absolutely right with everything that's going on in the world that we keep what's happening in Ukraine at the forefront of our minds. And I think the Lord Mayor can know that she goes with the support of every member of this council, and I suspect everybody in this city for this. So, yeah, wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you. I turn to the board, and do we accept the recommendation on page 191? Take it we all do. Okay, we're on to Councillor Harlan's papers and item 11, please.
Thank you, Leader. So this report brings a further update on the Council's position regarding the cost of living crisis and the actions that we have taken with our partners to help tackle it since the last update back in July. We've continued to update Exec Board in every sort of 4 months. It outlines the great work being done across the council and what support is being delivered by Leeds City Council, our third sector partners, faith groups and others. The report shows that we and those partners are proactive and continue to ensure the available support is there and it's getting to the right place where it's most needed. Even with those advice services, the emergency support we provide and the strong network of food banks in Leeds, many residents still face worsening situations and going without essentials. The report states that 22% of the Leeds population is living in relative poverty. Our local welfare support is facing unprecedented and unsustainable demand. Our welfare rights unit is facing a situation where clients are increasingly receiving all the benefits that they are entitled to, but are still unable to pay for the essentials. A sobering thought with inflation still high, energy prices still expected to be higher than last year, and basic income not sufficient to meet basic needs. Food and drink price inflation is still persistently high. Temporary accommodation placements continue to increase, and nearly half of those families are with dependent children. Universal credit claims continue to increase, and migration to universal credit risks claimants having their income reduced. The crisis is having a number of worrying impacts, including exceptional pressure on services and our staff who are increasingly dealing with people with complex mental health issues. Health partners reporting that some residents have been unable to afford multiple prescriptions and are prioritising between them. Outbreaks and conditions linked to deprivation such as scabies has risen. In addition, the future of the government's household support fund provided to local authorities is currently uncertain after March 2024. We might hear more today. Barnardo's, alongside other charities, have called on the Chancellor to commit to long-term funding for the fund. The report lists the actions we're taking over winter to support residents affected by the crisis, including a comms campaign for winter wellbeing guidance and general cost of living advice, an updated Managing Your Money booklet from the Money Information Centre, resuming the Warm Spaces programme as welcome spaces, as well as our annual winter coat appeal. The appendices go into greater detail and data of what has been achieved, but they also show some statistics which are quite stark. It seems wrong in some ways to say, and I say this every time I bring this report, that it's a good report due to the nature of some of the content. But as ever, the teams are working to ensure our residents are supported when and where needed. I'd like to thank our teams for their continued support and dedication when dealing with people in such difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harland. Councillor Lamb, please.
I almost feel you're racing through it so fast. I should ask a whole series of questions here, but I guess no one's going to thank me for that. So I don't have any particular questions. Thank you for the report, and I suspect there are things happening as we speak that will help people significantly with the cost of living as the economy improves.
Let's hope so. We've all got our fingers crossed on that one. Okay, are there any other members of the board want to come in on this item? I don't see anybody. So thank you for that, Councillor Harland. I'll turn to the recommendations on page 211. And I take it the board are happy with those recommendations. That's great. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of the public. That's the end of the public part of the meeting. So I'll ask all members of the public to leave as we move into the confidential session. Thank you to everybody who's come to watch our meeting today. Sometimes we're a bit livelier in here, but thank you for coming along.